Melbourne arrivals. We are now in the closing stages of leg 3. We've already seen the top points go for Mafre. Dongfeng race team got their piece of the pie. Then it was the turn of Vestas 11th Hour Racing and Team Brunel. Sun Hunkai Scallywag rolled across the finish line in Melbourne just a few moments ago. Now Turn the Tide on Plastic is lining up for the welcome of Melbourne. The Southern Ocean is behind them, and D Kafari and crew are blistering along with fantastic conditions at the moment as the fleet joins them sailing across the finish line. Conrad Coleman is with me as always. Now, Conrad, judging by my eye where we know the finish line to be, and the computer thinks so as well, potentially here a jibe to go.
Well, it could be. You know, the wind has been really unstable here as they've come into Port Phillip Bay. They had a pretty smooth run-in earlier today through the heads and then completely becalmed. And there is nothing worse than sailing out at sea, 6,500 miles, 15 days at sea, and then to have the wind shut off and you're sitting there looking at the land and unable to get to it.
And this, though, is a very fantastic scene right now. We saw something similar with Sun Hunkai Scallywag, the sailors in shorts, t-shirts, sunglasses, and it looks to me like everybody up on deck. We were mentioning a jibe just a few moments ago. Now it looks like it's going to happen. Conrad, just talk us through this moment.
Well, they certainly know how to do this manoeuvre. As you've been watching them step their way up and down eastwards, all the way through the through the Indian Ocean. Every kink on the tracker, if you go back and look at, or if you've been watching the last 15 days, every kink is a manoeuvre just like this one. So it looks like they've got the masthead code 0 up there at the moment, not the A3. And what they're going to do is they're going to, as they turn the boat to the left or left hand down, spin the boat through a jibe, they're going to do a big ease on the sheet that's currently chucking that Volvo Ocean 65 through the water around 12 knots at the moment. And then spin the boat, the back of the boat through the wind, and then pick up the sail on the other side. So it's a lot of grinding, big ease on one side, a big grind on the other, and they've got all hands on deck, not only just to enjoy the moment, but also to make sure that they earn their arrival.
And this will be a manoeuvre that they should have been able to perfect, not only over this leg, but the previous 2 legs as well. And down on the water, keeping a close eye on how this boat is sailing. Coming into the finish line, we've got Nick Bice, the manager of the Volvo Ocean Race Boatyard. Let's go down to him to get the atmosphere.
I tell you what, there's some pretty broad smiles on board right now, and they should be extremely proud of what they've just done. To the finish here with one expected jibe to come in on a very well-deserved finish, only 34 hours or so behind the leaders after 15 days at sea. I mean, they've done a fantastic job. A relatively inexperienced crew, with some absolutely very strong heads on board though in D Kafaria, Liz Wardley, Nico Lungman. I mean, they've got a great team. They're only going to get better, and I tell you what, we shouldn't take anything away from this team. They've done a fantastic job, and it wasn't easy out there, and we saw from some footage earlier during the leg that this boat actually did have a little layover, which wouldn't have been much fun. This jibe coming up is a whole lot of a different story though, and they'll do a nicely executed jibe and head into the finish.
Oh, thank you, Nick. We're going to be coming back to Nick Bice as the boat gets a little closer to the finish line. But just look at that from the helicopter right now. Over the top of the Volvo Ocean 65, Turn the Tide on Plastic. Now the onboard shots, they are primed for this jibe. This should be the final jibe that they need to do, which is why we're seeing the crew up on deck, getting ready, and then waiting for the right moment. On the wheel, I think that was Liz Wardley, just helming the boat right now. Very accomplished sailor. This is her 3rd Volvo Ocean race. The rest of the crew on deck, on the pumps. 10 sailors on this team, much more than we've seen on the other boats because of the configuration of their team.
Well, yeah, we had an opportunity to talk a little about that when we had Antonio Fontes out of action on the previous boat to come in into Melbourne, Songkunkai Scallywag. They've gone with 8 people, or 7 males and Annemieke Best, 1 female. Oh, here we go into the jibe. So as I was talking about previously, they do the big ease on the left-hand side of the boat, on the port side, and then they whip that sail around. Interesting to see that, contrary to the way that the boats were jibing yesterday with a little bit more breeze, it's a bit of an inside jibe rather than an outside jibe. Just to help explain a little bit about this, sailing jargon, we're famous for that, particularly offshore, is that the sail spins inside itself rather than easing off completely and the clew going all the way around the front of the sail. So it means that they're jibing the whole sail, hundreds of square meters of 3DI material from North Sails, through the narrow slot between the J1 forestay and then the cable that's inside the masthead code 0 itself. So it can be tricky, but it's cleaner and easier when it's well executed, just like that one. Clearly they've done it before.
And they've done that before. They've done it an awful lot. Sometimes not to complete success. It has to be said, like all the teams, these manoeuvres looking very easy today, much more challenging in the wind of the waves that we've seen over the last 2 weeks. We're watching live footages right now from the helicopter, from on board, as Turn the Tide on Plastic approach the finish line in Melbourne. They have just completed their jibe, as Conrad was saying, rather well. It was a very nicely executed manoeuvre, and we understand that we are inside 1 minute 30 seconds maybe to the finish line. The crew on board just pointing out a few points. It might have been the pin end of the line, and down on the water is Nick Bice. He is alongside the Volvo Ocean 65. Nick, give us an idea, how far away off this line are we?
Well, the dual flag Turn the Tide on Plastics picked that beautifully, and they're aiming directly for the middle of the line, and we're only probably 5 boat lengths away at this point, so we're at less than probably 30 seconds or so, and they're going to be crossing this line in 6th position of this very iconic leg of the Volvo Ocean Race. I see the race official has a shotgun in hand, and he's ready to give that big gun as they go across the line. And here we go, we're looking for Liz, steering the boat into Australian waters with an Australian flag on the back of her wet weather gear, ready to finish that fantastic leg. There we go, the infamous bear down, and bang, wonderful effort. What an absolute effort. You can see Dee Kafari there, the smile on her face is lighting up the whole of the state of Victoria. Wonderful. Well done to Turn the Tide on Plastics. Well done to Dee Kafari and her team. They should be extremely proud, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people on the dock for when they arrive to actually give them a pat on the back and just remind them of what a fantastic job that they have absolutely done. Wonderful scenes.
Oh, thank you very much, Nick. We are sharing in those wonderful scenes right now with the footage just coming in, the crew there now, all embracing, all big smiles. And a lot of these sailors, Conrad, I mean, we do talk about this. You've got a lot of sailors there, an awful lot of skill, but it's one thing to have a gold medal and be able to sail around a short course quickly, but now you go up against some of the worst conditions the world has ever seen, but you've come out on top.
Yeah, frankly, really impressive. That Dee has got a big task on her hands, taking America's Cup sailors like Bleden Mon and Klapsich. They're the Italian sailor who noticeably hadn't been offshore, much like Bianca Cook, hadn't been racing offshore, had been working previously in super yachts and shorter deliveries and so on. So, she's a lot of talent, but a really mixed bag. And any skipper has to take a new crew and transform them. Dee has had to sort of turn them into ocean races first, and then also turn them into a team that can work really well together. So I think that she's done an incredible job. They've had a rough ride through the Indian Ocean, as I'm sure that we're going to hear about now. But big smiles on board, and just so wonderful to see Liz Wardley, the Australian, there sailing again into home waters. That is just so satisfying.
It's such a special moment when you get to take your team into the waters that you know so well. And we are just watching the stern camera now. The person that you can see in the Santa hat there with the headset on, that is Dee Kafari, the skipper of Turn the Tide on Plastic. And she is a big name in ocean sailing. Not only has she led a very impressive team this year, as you say, really from the ground up, but the atmosphere on board, whenever we seem to dial into this boat, it is one of, they're always looking for doing better, they're pushing hard, but there's a real team atmosphere on board. It looks strong.
Well, yeah, they've got this incredible challenge of learning and growing together as a team. And one of the things that has really impressed me with Dee is just Nick Bice was talking about the fact that her smile was lighting up the state of Victoria, and it was certainly lighting up all of the Indian Ocean as well. I think that's one of the incredible strengths of this team is the attitude on board, that they've come in young, hungry, ready to learn. They've got an incredible skipper on board who has the soft skills, the social skills to really meld this team. Dee Kafari, most notably, before she became a professional ocean racing skipper, this is, I think her 5th lap of the globe. Previously, she was a elementary school teacher, and so clearly, she knows what it's like to have that sort of pedagogic role to transmit information and build a really nice environment on board. And certainly in contrast to some of the other boats that we've seen crossing this line in the past 34 hours or so, really, really different attitude on board, and it's really impressive to see.
And it's really interesting how well that connects with the fans. I mean, if you've been watching the race over the last, however many months now, you'll know that this boat stands apart in so many ways. But most crucially, I think that this team has had every opportunity to say, we're just out here to get across the finish line. They could have made their personal challenge very easy, but that's never the rhetoric that we get off the boat.
Well, that's right. You can see there on the port hand side of the boat, Turn the Tide on Plastic. Their whole campaign is about carrying a message over and above just racing around the world. They've got scientific equipment on board that is hoovering up microplastic particles in the ocean. They're participating in a scientific campaign. And they're carrying, over and above just carrying a message of the fact that we need to be more responsible with our consumption and use of single-use plastics. And yet they're not just here to wave a flag. That Dee Kafari has the experience to lead this team to a real result. And as you say, they keep coming back to that, and they're hungry, and they're coming up to it.
Well, and they keep progressing as well, because these are the results as we can see them now, with Turn the Tide on Plastic starting to get a little bit closer to those teams ahead. They didn't have a great first leg, they were last. They didn't have a great second leg, they were last. Okay, you don't want to capitalise on the misfortunes of others, but this boat took the decision to play things a little bit safe and know their own limits, and they've come out ahead of AXA Nobel. These points right now is looking very good for Mafre. We know that these will be the positions that all the boats will finish. Dongfeng Race Team and Vestas 11th Hour Racing on the podium, but with still a battle to go. Team Brunel next in 4th, and then Team Sun Hun Kai Scallywag, Team AXA Nobel, and Turn the Tide on Plastic very tightly grouped together as the back 3. Well, we're just waiting just to get confirmation of the audio link between the boat in Melbourne, the other side of the world, from us here in Alicante and Volvo Ocean Racing headquarters. So when we get that connection to Dee, we will bring you a little bit of an interview with her. Now, this is the moment that we've seen so many of the boats go through, and I just cannot help but notice how cruel it is for all these teams. You get that wonderful jubilation, the celebration. Now it's about realizing, okay, we've got a little bit of a journey left to go. You have to do that work to get yourself onto the dock. And it's that aching feeling you just want to drop everything and go, oh, one more challenge? I've got to go underneath this bridge?
Well, that's right. Right? These boats are not designed for going around corners or doing short course racing. It's a big effort to get the mainsail, that big square head, connected and disconnected. It's not something, obviously, that they do at sea. And it's not like a football match when you can sort of run around, get the applause, and then go home and have a shower. There's plenty of work still to be done.
Well, there's so much work to be done, in fact, that we've just heard that Dikafari not available at the moment to give us a little bit of an insight, a little bit of an interview. So we are going to bring that to you, but it's going to be on the dock when the boat reaches the safety of the race village in Melbourne. It's just going to be a short stopover, but there is some activities down there on the dock. And Turn the Tide on Plastic will be very pleased, as with all the teams, to get to the safety of Melbourne. Dikafari has led her boat through a ferocious Southern Ocean to a very proud finish here in Melbourne.
Seen it, leg 0 and prologue, we have been there, so the belief is there, and I just need to keep my guys believing.
Such an amazing feeling. It's awesome.
That becomes irrelevant after a while. I think you fight for a podium or you fight the battle that you're in.
Whoa! What a big wave.
This is my 6th time in the Southern Ocean and I don't remember sailing this far north in this area. The crew that I started the leg with are very different to the crew I finished the leg with, and that gives me confidence to go forward.
Turn the Tide on Plastic with Dikafari getting stronger and stronger as the Volvo Ocean Race continues to rumble on, and there is one boat still with many miles left to go before they can get themselves into the safety of Melbourne, and that of course is the Dutch team, Axel Nobel, with Simeon Tinpoint as skipper. Now we know that they've had some problems, but they are up to full speed, and it's simply the deficit that they are trying to erase. They will arrive in Melbourne. The current ETA is 1500 UTC on the 27th of December. And if you're in Melbourne, that is 200, or basically 2 a.m. in the morning on the 28th. So as you can tell, they have got a little bit of work to do. The breeze has not been favourable to them. And well, to give you some idea, look at that. They are going to have to go pretty much upwind to get to the finish. It's every sailor's nightmare.
Well, particularly these boats are designed for the Southern Ocean leg, the Indian Ocean that they have just traversed, and these boats are super optimized for going downwind rather than upwind. They're very flat. It's going to be a bumpy ride to the finish, and basically they're sort of burying into an anticyclone system. They'll be taking over and then heading northwards. Lots of work still to go.
Now, I should just say that we were unable to get Dikafari on the line, but now that she is in Melbourne, making her way up the river to this beautiful city, and the warmth and relief that will surely follow such an incredible leg, we are going to be bringing you her words from the dock out on social media. You can catch up with all the action on the dock side with all the highlights. And of course, Melbourne still has a lot to offer us for the Volvo Ocean Race. There's going to be a Pro-Am race on this short stopover, and we are going to get the next leg start on the 2nd of January, so be there if you can, and if you can't, join us online. We will be bringing you all the race, and we're going to leave you now with the scenes from an unbelievable leg 3 and the grueling Southern Ocean.
Cape Town conditions here, got a beautiful southeaster, 25 knots. This is going to be good. Hold on to your hats.
some big waves and 40 knots, so it's a bit complicated. Upwind with some tacks to do.
We have to cross a ridge. So a ridge is always difficult to cross because this is a transition between two winds.
You know, I think we've closed quite a lot on the leaders here. It's been a little good move for us.
So it's the calm before the storm. We've got about 24 hours before we know the wind's going to start building and we get our first really big depression that is going to pack a punch.
Into the Southern Ocean. This is where the fun begins.
We had a jibe on in pretty hard conditions, 35 knots, 40. The main slamming over on the runners, breaking the battens. The worst part is we've pulled the track off the back of the mast.
We're having a big battle here with Dongfeng. The last 2-3 days been just a little bit crazy with so many jibes going on in the exclusion zone.